This is the pheasant back mushroom. It's my favorite mushroom to make mushroom jerky with. This is a polypore that is very abundant in the spring. It's called Cerioporus Squamosus, or the Dryad Saddle. A very common name is pheasant back because if you look at the pattern on the cap there, it looks like the feathers on a pheasant's back. It is a great mushroom to make jerky with because of its mild flavor, and they're abundant in the spring. You can see here what the younger ones look like. I call this the ogre ear because if you've ever seen Shrek, it looks like one of his ears. So here I'm going to test to see if this mushroom is still tender enough to make jerky with. Once they get mature, they're just like chewing on leather. They're too tough. So I'm going to bend the margin here, and it broke. You can see here how it split. That's how I know that this is still tender enough to make jerky with. It'll be like leather and it'll just bend if it's too mature. But since this snaps, it's still nice and tender. Here's how you can identify this mushroom. Make sure to note the pores on the bottom. These are very large open pores, and on a more mature specimen like this, you can notice the depth of the pores. They're also not a uniform oval shape. If you're looking at a very young specimen, the pores will not be very deep, so this is also a good way to tell how old the mushroom is. The cap will be a light brown color, and it'll have some slight scaling with a feathered pattern.
They smell very strongly of cucumber or watermelon rind.
Often you'll see a black bottom on these where it meets the wood. You'll find these growing on dead or dying logs. I see it on very far decayed wood even. This stump has been here for years and years and years, and it is so old that it's just kind of crumbling and falling apart. But the pheasant backs still return every year. Like, it is basically just dirt in the middle of this stump. It's so old. These grow on dead or dying hardwood trees. I find them most often on box elder. It's also very common to see them on elm and sycamore. When I'm making this jerky, I'm also going to make some mushroom broth alongside of it. So I'm harvesting the more mature, tougher parts of the mushroom. If I was just harvesting this to cook and eat, I would cut around the outer margin and leave the rest on the stump. But since I'm making a stock, I'll be using the tougher bits. When handling this mushroom, it sometimes irritates my skin a little bit, so if you have very sensitive skin, I would recommend wearing gloves when you're preparing this. Here's another cluster of pheasant back mushrooms. Something to notice on this one is the last fruiting from in the fall is still on there. Pheasant back is more commonly known as a spring mushroom, but it does fruit in the spring and the fall. It doesn't always fruit on the fall for every tree, but I see it on a lot of them. You might also notice, since this is a younger fruiting, that the pores aren't nearly as deep as it was on those ones we saw earlier. Completely white on the inside, very shallow pores. This is a very fresh one. There are no bugs at all. Pheasant back is extremely bug resistant. I don't think I've ever seen one with fungus gnats. That makes it very quick to process, and one of the reasons why it is my favorite mushroom to make jerky with. Here's another cluster I just found growing on a hackberry.
To make these easier to clean, I just take a vegetable peeler and peel off the pore surface. A lot of dirt can get trapped inside the pores, and it gives it a little bit of a weird texture when it's dehydrated, so I just get rid of those.
Really smelly looking potatoes.
Do you think these are potatoes?
No. Just saying they look like potatoes and they're really smelly.
Now I'm just gonna wash all of the mushrooms in my big bowl of water. When you peel the pores off, it makes it a lot easier to clean them. Now I'm just breaking them into smaller pieces, keeping in mind that these are gonna shrink a lot. So this is about the size piece that I'm going for. That one's pretty good. Doing pretty big chunks. But if you want it to dehydrate faster, you can do smaller chunks. The bigger you leave the chunks, the longer it's going to take for them to dehydrate. And I just tear them with my hands. I am going to bring this to a boil, let it boil for a couple minutes, also adding some salt and a little bit of seasoning to the pot. I usually just do some kind of all-purpose seasoning. Now to make the marinade, the basic formula I use is something salty, something sweet, something tart, and an oil. That's just the basic formula, and the possibilities are endless. I'm just doing something really simple today for the marinade. I've got some soy sauce, Laogan Ma chili crisp, just so good. Just a little splash of white vinegar. I would do rice wine vinegar if I had any, and just some plain old white sugar. The Laogan Ma is oil based, so this will be the oil for this one. I usually do a spicy element in mine too because I really like spicy food, but you can leave that out if you don't like spicy stuff, obviously. And I'm also adding back in some of that mushroom broth just until the marinade fully covers all of the mushrooms. This is after 10 hours on 160. They're not crispy, but most of the moisture is gone. They're still a little bit flexible. So I'd say these are done. Great texture. This mushroom is so good as a jerky. You don't get any of that cucumber flavor. I would have added a little bit more salt to my marinade, I think. But it's still good like this. I just like things really salty. Very happy with how that turned out.
Leave a comment below if you tried making pheasant back jerky or your favorite mushroom to make jerky with. Subscribe for more videos on edible plants and mushrooms.